not to take this from the Ohio State perspective, but I want Michigan fans to understand this. And this is how I viewed this game. Oregon was, of course, the other team that beat Ohio State and ran the ball well against Ohio State, but it was in a much different fashion. Oregon like out schemed Ohio State. Like Ohio State players were out of position. This is before they fixed their defense. And you just saw a lot of like gaping holes with guys like nowhere to be found and Oregon runners running for 40 yards without anyone close to them. They were just out scheming, tricking them and winning and gashing them in the run game in that sense. Michigan, when you made the statement, they pushed around Ohio State. That's exactly what it was. Like Ohio State, they seemed like they were in position to make tackles and to stop the plays. They weren't fooled for the most part. And the holes were they were sizable. They were certainly enough to get Hassan Haskins through, but they weren't these gaping holes because
Right.
Ohio State didn't know what was coming. They just got physically just pushed around and bullied.
And I don't think I think people gave Michigan a chance in this game. Nobody thought that they were going to win this game by doing that, though, right? They thought, I think, we talked about it last week. How does Michigan win this game? They get some turnovers, maybe a few bounces go their way. Nobody saw Michigan playing bully ball against Ohio State and then just shoving them, essentially shoving it down their throat and saying, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do this, but you still can't stop us. I don't think you or I or anybody else saw that coming. But, honestly, what I saw, and this is another, ode to the crowd as well, from the moment, and this was on both sides of the ball. Obviously, Ohio State started off on offense, and then Michigan's offense went and put the pressure on too. But that first possession that Ohio State had on offense, and they had a fumble, they already had a false start. The crowd's going crazy. Ohio State looked a little deer in headlights for the first time I've really ever seen them in recent years. And so they looked like, holy crap, this team is for real. This crowd is for real. We're not going to be able to do everything that we wanted to do. And from there on, I think Michigan kind of felt that fear and put the pressure on. And so that's when Jim Harbaugh and the rest of this coaching staff and these players thought, all right, we can just keep moving them around and we're going to be the better team and the stronger team today.
Yeah, Michigan won it. They won it decisively. They won it fair and square. I don't want to bring weather into it, but I will in a sense because it just had I guess it added to the environment, added to the vibe, added to everything on Michigan's side. And I do think that they were better suited for the weather than Ohio State. And that's not, again, detracting from Michigan's win because elements are part of the game, especially if you're going to play in the Big Ten. And if Ohio State's going to throw the ball 50 times and rely on quarterbacks and receivers to carry the team, then that's what you run into. But that didn't deter them, nor did it really hinder them. But I got to say, and this is full disclosure for people that don't know, I'm an Ohio State fan. So, and which I hate to blow that cover sometimes because I love when people watch me for like 3 years and they have no idea who I root for. But I say that
it took me a while to figure it out. It took me until we had some other conversations offline to figure that out too. So I give you props there for sure.
We go straight ahead with what we consider to be unbiased and neutral college football analysis. And when I say unbiased, I know that's humanly impossible, but as close as we can get. So I bring this up because I didn't really consider much about the weather throughout the week. We might have mentioned it here in our discussion, but it hit me when somebody got a hold of me and left a comment or whatever. And then I looked it up the night before, and it was really late the night before. And I texted my two kids. I said, 23 degrees at kickoff and snow. And I put, uh-oh. It just didn't seem like that was going to be something Ohio State needed to deal with or wanted or was going to aid that passing game. And then once I saw it on the screen, it really did feel like a Michigan scene.
Yeah, and I thought too, Michigan embraced it too. I thought, it's one of those situations where if you're the team that is is embracing that and you've got the energy, then you love that environment and atmosphere. If all of a sudden you are on the other side, which Ohio State was, that's the worst thing, that you're just cold and miserable on the sidelines. Things don't work as well. Things are more slippery, it seems. It definitely added to the vibe that Michigan and Michigan did embrace it. And I thought, it definitely helped Michigan in terms of the game plan as well. Michigan said from the get-go, Josh Gaddis said it before the season started, our identity is running the ball. Ohio State's identity is very obviously throwing the ball. They're the best passing team in the country. So it definitely does that. But at the same time, Ohio State was averaging almost 200 yards of rushing on the season, right? I mean, they're at 186 now. I'm not exactly sure what their average was before that game, but to hold them to 65 rushing yards on 30 attempts at just over 2 yards a carry was, I think, a difference in the game because, like you said before we got on here, Ohio State was still able to throw the ball well. They didn't throw it deep. They didn't have those big plays that they usually had, but Stroud still had 400 yards passing. Those receivers were unbelievable, even in good Michigan coverage. So they were able to move the ball and score that way. But when that's all they had, that was the difference in the game. Usually Ohio State's able to break those runs off too and have a few big holes where they go down and run it. And a lot of times when they need to, they'll run it so that they can eat up clock as well. They were never able to get that going all day long. And I thought that for Ohio State's offensive game plan really put a wrinkle in what they wanted to do.
Ohio State's quarterback, 3 best wide receivers, 2 from California, 2 from Texas, best running back from Virginia. But they didn't, and again, I'm not taking away the win from Michigan, regardless of the elements. I don't think it hindered them. Like they seemed comfortable. They threw the ball well. Like it wasn't like CJ Stroud suddenly couldn't control the football and wasn't throwing well, or they were dropping passes. They weren't. It was just like the weather just seemed to be Michigan weather versus Ohio State being a little bit more pass happy and a little bit more reliant on speed and ball skills through the air. And that's what it played out to be.
And I think too, what that speaks to is in the past under Jim Harbaugh, I don't think his teams were that mentally tough. I think when things went wrong, they collapsed very easily. Or if it was a tough environment, things, they wouldn't be able to handle the pressure. This year, that's been very different. They've gone to Nebraska in what those players said was equal to a Penn State whiteout. Then they went to an actual Penn State whiteout, and they were able to go in the ups and downs of those games and still come out with wins. Obviously, they went to Michigan State and, went to the wire in a crazy environment there. So for them to be able to be mentally tough and look mentally tougher than Ohio State, which they haven't in most years either, then I thought that was the big difference as well. There was a video too that came out of Michigan and Ohio State going into the locker rooms at halftime. Ohio State's looking around like, what's going on? Because they hear behind them Michigan players going nuts on their way into the locker room. I think it was at that moment that Michigan guys were like, we've got this. They don't want it as bad as we do. The energy on Michigan's sideline and in the crowd was such a big part of that win. And Michigan's used that energy from practice in the preseason to practice all year long to in games. They've changed that with the coaching staff, with these players, and it's been a big difference for them this year. And I think it was a big difference on Saturday as well.